I have given out this pizza dough recipe to, I don't even know how many people at this point. So I figured I've got to share it with you guys. Every Friday we have a pizza pajama party right when we come home from school. So in saying that, with it being Friday, I'm sharing with you guys my pizza dough recipe, and it's so easy. It only takes 15 minutes to make, and 10 of those minutes are actually spent, believe it or not, waiting around for the yeast to actually wake up. So let me show you how easy it is. If you have a mixer, which you don't have to necessarily have for this recipe, let me be honest with you, it makes it so much easier. You're going to need a kneading tool. So it looks like a spiral. And what this is gonna do is this is actually gonna knead your dough for you so that you don't have to get your hands dirty. The only thing that I use is I use one bowl. That's it. So there's kind of two ways that you can do yeast. Now, I've always used the little granular versions of the yeast that come in the glass jars, and sometimes they come in packets. And it's in the baking section at the grocery store. Now, if you were to go to an Italian bakery or true bakery that sells yeast, it'll come in like, it looks like a stick of butter, and that's also yeast. It's not available in my area, so I just don't use it. But this guy, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I love their yeast. Now, they have smaller bottles, they have packets, and they've got these big guys. If you bake a lot, you're gonna be familiar with these ones. And the only thing that I do when I buy the glass bottles is I just put the month and the year of when I open this, because yeast is generally good after you open it for about 6 months. After that, you're gonna need more yeast for it to kind of poof up your dough and whatnot. But these guys only last me about 3 months, and predominantly I use it for pizza. Now, when you're using the glass jars, the ones that are smaller, there's a whole bunch of different ones. There's ones for specifically for pizza, there's this traditional one, there's one for bread machines, and literally the only difference is how it looks like. So the one for the bread machine, it's gonna be these super, super tiny hyphens, and that's because the way that you put in the ingredients into your bread machine, the yeast just needs to be activated and basically melt that much faster. Whereas this traditional one, the granulars are a lot bigger, so you just have to spend a little bit more time getting these little guys to wake up as far as that goes. Honestly, that's the only difference. So if you have a bottle that says like pizza or bread machine or whatever, you can still use it to make pizza. You don't have to buy a specific yeast for what you're doing. So in saying that, if you have or if you've purchased a little packet, in each of those packets is 2 1/4 teaspoons. Now with this recipe, you only actually need 2 teaspoons. But if you're using a packet, I've done 2 1/4, I've done 2, there's literally no difference. So I figure when I've got these big jars or these big bottles, I save the quarter, and eventually I'll get like a free pizza's worth of yeast out of the bottle. I'm doubling this recipe, and I'll put the recipe for just one 10-inch pizza down below, but I'm doubling my recipe, so just keep that in mind. So for me, when I double this recipe, it's enough for supper for the 4 of us, plus we get leftovers for the weekend. So if we're out after classes, or you know, if we go to the library and the kids are hungry, I always pack some so that we can have it like, you know, as a lunch or a snack or whatnot. 2 10-inch pizzas is more than sufficient for the 4 of us. And I have a 4 and a 6-year-old and 2 adults, just to kind of give you an idea of what you're looking at. I've put in my yeast, and now because this yeast is very, very hungry,
you're going to add in your sugar, then your warm water, and then you're going to whisk it and let it rest for 10 minutes.
So the timer went off, and I just want to show you what the yeast actually looks like. So you can see it's nicely poofed up, and if you want to check to see how fresh your yeast is, do the same thing as in this step. Pretend you're making the pizza, and if after 10 minutes it looks nice and poofy, you know you've got great yeast. If it doesn't, then your yeast is old. If you see no bubbles, then your yeast is dead. You ever hear anyone talking about how, you know, they've got dead yeast or they're testing yeast on another channel? Well, this is how you do it. I'm gonna put my spindle on and I'm going to raise this up. And now I'm gonna put the 3 tablespoons of oil on. And if this is alarming on you, I've tried it with less. I find the pizza dough just sticks like crazy, but I'm not doing 3 full tablespoons. I'm kind of doing it like 3/4 of a tablespoon 3 times. All right, and I'm done with that. Now I turn it on. Now on my mixer, I'm only going to the lowest setting. Very first level is just stir. So my mixer never ever goes over that as far as like this step goes. Okay, so I've got my 1 full cup. And then I've got 3/4. And then I've got, because I'm doubling this recipe, another 1. And another 3/4, and that's it. I don't know about you guys, but my mixer and my dough hook have never been able to take all the dough, no matter how long I've waited, how I've, introduced the flour slowly, quickly. I always have to take it off the edges. If you're new to doing this, do not do this. I've had this mixer for over 13 years. This guy and I are very well acquainted.
When you're using a spatula to pull the dough off the sides, stop the machine completely, push it off of the edges, and start it again. And do this step every single time.
What you're trying to do when you're pushing it off the edges is just trying to get this ball like it is right now. It's sticking to itself, it's not sticking to the walls anymore, and it's only on the hook. You're gonna set your timer for 4 minutes. Let's talk about toppings. So if you have picky eaters, this is the time where you can actually really start sneaking stuff in. So for the kids' pizza, I've got orange cheese or shredded carrot, and I've got trees, AKA broccoli. And for my husband and I got some pine mushrooms from the farmer's market, and I just sauteed them and caramelized them a little bit with some Vidalian sweet onion. So I've got that. And I also have the cheese. Now I buy my cheese in bulk, and what I do is I take out a chunk of time out of my day on the weekend, and all I do is I just process cheese. Then what I do is I take 3 cups and I measure out roughly. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to start packing it and taking off the top when you're measuring. It's just whatever I can grab with a cup. I do that 3 times, so roughly 3 cups, and I put those into Ziploc bags when they're already shredded. That way, anytime it's pizza night, that morning, all I have to do is pull it out of the freezer, put it on the counter on top of a towel, because I don't like the condensation getting all over the countertop. And then by the time we're home, I've got freshly grated cheese, and I bought it when it was on sale, and I got points for it from our grocery store, and I don't have to worry about getting things last minute. And that's the way a lot of the things that I use as toppers work. So for the maple onion jam, I made that a while ago from the onions from the garden. The pizza sauce, last time I bought 24 cans of it, because A, it was on sale, and I got points for it. When people ask, well, it's so hard to cook, I work full time and I do this. I was working 80+ hours a week. We still had Pizza Pajama Fridays, and I was still able to make pizzas, because if you do a little bit every time you go to make dinner or you go grocery shopping, then when it comes time to actually making the pizza, you're not making it everything from scratch, and it's not taking you a ton of time. The cheese was already grated last time. I threw it into Ziploc bags. I just have to wait for it to thaw out. And actually, the bowl that it's sitting in has a lot of condensation in it, and it's still quite cold. But that's fine, because it'll thaw out even more so and get all nice and melted in the barbecue when we go to cook it. Keep that in mind when you're looking for toppings. We don't eat pepperoni very often on our pizzas, but when I buy the Ziggy's, you know, big pack of pepperoni, what I'll do is I'll set aside like say like 10 to 15 slices, put those into little snack Ziploc bags. And then that way, that's one extra thing that I'm pulling out of the pizza in order to have a pepperoni and cheese pizza. And I'm not cutting it from scratch. I'm not running to the store getting it. You know, everything is already pre-done. I'm literally just basically going grocery shopping in my freezer and pulling out whatever I need for the pizza. Pre-cut everything beforehand. But while this is basically getting set up, this is where I'll grab any extra vegetables that I want to put on as toppers. Sometimes I'll do shishito peppers, and I have a video on how I do my bulk shishito peppers, so I basically can have freshly grilled shishito peppers throughout the winter when they're not in season. You can't get them at the grocery store or nothing. So sometimes I'll dig those out of the freezer because those take no time. You don't have to thaw those out at all. Or I'll load up the dishwasher in this time, or, you know, kind of clean up the countertops. I've got a whole bunch of mason jars sitting here because I've got 2 projects that I'm going to be working on tomorrow. It's not even a 15-minute recipe. The other thing that I want to talk to you guys about is actually going through and cooking the pizza. I love doing the pizza in the barbecue, but that isn't always available for everyone. And you can, by all means, do this recipe in the oven. You don't have to have, you know, the next couple of fancy things that I'm going to show you. But if you want to up your level in your pizza game, these are definitely going to help. I do not wash these. These are pizza stones. And when they look like this, you know that there's been a lot of love of pizza going on around here.
Place the pizza stones in the barbecue right away.
When you take the dough out of here, or if you're kneading it on your own, what you're wanting to see is that it's not sticking to anything and it's so light and fluffy. And you'll be able to tell by, you know, when you're holding it, it's basically like a, I want to say like a marshmallow, like a harder marshmallow. The thing that we're going to do is we're going to roughly cut it in half as best as we can. There we go. Good enough. Thank you. Mom,
can I help you?
Yes, you can. All right, you're going to flour your surface, and you're basically going to take this and give it a facelift. So all the horrible facelift stuff is going to the back, and you're gonna make it into a nice circle. Took, what, 3 seconds? Then you're gonna put a little bit of flour on. Okay, you're gonna then roll it out, and my stone is about 10 inches wide, and I can eyeball it as far as like how big I need to make this. Now, I'm not a professional. I can throw pizza up in the air. I choose not to because I don't like my house being a horrendous mess with the flour that you get.
Yeah, and getting pizza at the top, which is terrible.
What on this one? Okay, this is roughly the size that I want. Okay, the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my parchment paper, and it's nice when you use an old one. See, this is the garbage side when you gave your pizza a facelift, and it still looks perfectly fine. So I know my pizza pan is roughly about this size because I can see where the barbecue burnt it and where it's still white. Okay, now on this step, this is where you want to put your pizza onto something, because if you don't at this point, it is very difficult to do it once you have toppings on it because they're going to want to all slide off. Put that one off to the side, and I'm going to roll out my second one. If you don't use a cutting board like this and you just try and lift it, this is nice and light now, but even that has, I don't know if you can see it, it has like a curve to it. See, even I tried to tighten it, it wouldn't go. So imagine it having a ton of toppings. It's gonna fly over. You're gonna end up with everything on the floor. So just do yourself a solid before you put on any sauce or any toppings whatsoever. Get it on something like a hard surface to make your life so much easier. These are the pizza things that I buy. I happen to get points on them every once in a while, and they were on sale. These have 213 mil, and I find this is just barely, it's basically just enough to do 2 pizzas. And I get my kids to help me with this step.
You know what to do and...
So I always empty out the pizza sauce beforehand because I don't want them to cut their fingers on the can. And I'm gonna pass that over to one of them. Okay, you gotta work here, buddy. And you're gonna use the back of a spoon to just smear it. Now, I find it's easier if you do the outside outline first. And once you have that, then you kind of have an idea of, okay, where can I smear it inside? And it's so much easier if you do the outside and then you do the inside. Now that the pizzas are basically done, you're gonna go in with your cheese. Cheese always goes first after this, because if you put it on after your toppings will never really cook. Now, the secret to getting cheese on the pizza is to cup your one hand and then sprinkle on with the other. So I'm just bringing up my sleeve so you guys can see this. So I'm right-handed, but I'm gonna show you with the opposite hand. So I'm gonna end up cupping with this one, and I'm gonna sprinkle with my left, so hopefully you guys can see it. And just where the sauce ends, I'm gonna kind of cup my hand. I'm not touching the pizza, but I'm just cupping my hand here, and I'm just moving my hand around and just sprinkling with my hand. And you can see, you get pretty close to the edge. And that's all I'm gonna do. And if I have leftover and I can't really move my hand, then I switch. I've never worked at a pizza joint, but I've seen a couple of times when they do that, and they have this machine that you basically push and it spreads it all out. We're gonna put our orange cheese / carrots, shredded carrot on the pizza. You don't want big chunks?
No, you really don't want big chunks.
Okay. And we've got our broccoli here.
Oh yeah. Don't forget to add broccoli.
I might have cut up a little bit too much broccoli. Yeah.
Oh yeah, too much broccoli.
That's okay.
You got the sweetness out of that, I think.
Yeah. Now, what my kids are not a fan of is onions and mushroom. I wanted to put the maple onion jam on top of this, but I'm gonna wait until it's completely cooked and out of the barbecue, and then use that as a last topping. I don't want to put it on the pizza right now, and we're done. In 15 minutes, you've got great homemade pizza that you made from scratch, and 10 of those minutes was basically spent on waiting for the yeast to wake up. Let's get these guys into the barbecue. The barbecue is sitting at 425, which is absolutely perfect. Now, you're gonna grab your whatever you put it on, and you're just gonna slide this right on to the stone. And you're gonna do the same thing with this guy. And that way your toppings aren't gonna slide off or anything. You're just gonna do a quick, I don't even rip that off. And that's it. It's been about 12 minutes, so we're just gonna open this up, and they are absolutely perfect. Now, the way that you check is if you see the color here, this is just a regular burger flipper that I use, is you want to see that this is a light brown. And if you're paranoid, you just lift up the bottom and see if you've got those nice little lines in there, then that means that it's perfectly done. So I'm just gonna slide these guys off and bring them into the house. It's been 5 minutes, so we're just gonna cut these guys up. And there you have it. Perfect pizza every time. And that's what the bottom looks like. Cheers!